I'm your host, Emily Lauren Dick. Welcome to the Tame the Shame podcast, where we celebrate those shamelessly being themselves. We're here to inspire you to live a perfectly imperfect life, embrace the body you've got, and take back your power so you can live the life you want. Stick around if you want to listen to me get comfortably uncomfortable with all the things that make us feel ashamed. Welcome, everyone, to the Tame the Shame podcast show. Today, I'd like to welcome Beth Marchant, a graphic designer and mom of three who has experienced everything from teenage pregnancy to recently beating stage 3 breast cancer. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Beth.
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here.
Amazing. Wow, Mama, you have lived a lot of lives in your years so far. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a teenage mother and how that experience has shaped you into the woman you are today?
Sure. I mean, there's nothing that really like prepares you for that. That's kind of, you're just like thrown off the deep end, and like motherhood's already crazy. So when you don't have any life skills and then you're thrown into it, it's kind of like, well, shit, I got to learn how to do the laundry really fast. There's a lot of like a ton of growing up in a very, very short amount of time. But I mean, like I would have never done it any other way. And I'm super lucky. Like we had a really good support system. We had, we did have backup, but that said, I mean, with a baby at I went back to work at 8 weeks because I didn't have mat leave. So I put her in a little snuggly and I'd walk to the YMCA, and I basically just demanded a job with the baby in there. And they were like, well, what are you going to do with your baby? And I'm like, well, if I work in the nursery, I can bring her with me.
There you go.
And I mean, the manager there at the time was like fantastic with that. She was like, absolutely. Like she made it possible for me to be able to work with a tiny baby and no mat leave. So
amazing. I love to hear those stories because that's all it takes, right? Is someone who gets it.
Step up, like that little bit of help. Like you're not asking for handouts. Like you're willing to work, but like somebody's got to give you a chance to actually go do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So fast forward, you obviously had another child, you were married. How did you navigate the transition from being a conservative housewife to becoming an independent woman after your divorce? And were there any challenges that you faced during that time?
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, it's a lot. I always worked. Like I always had like a little jobs or whatever, but like I didn't really do anything. I had no real financial freedom. I wasn't sure how anything worked. I had no idea about any of that really. So when we separated, I mean, aside from figuring out all the actual normal separation stuff, like with children and, all of that, and there was like a whole bunch of other nonsense, I also had to figure out how I pay a hydro bill, because like suddenly my name wasn't on anything for the house that I was living in. And, when you're almost 30 and you realize, holy shit, I don't even know how to pay a water bill. I don't even know whose name any of these things are in. And like, because there was no happy transfer of like, I'll put the bills in your name. It was just suddenly everything was pulled. And I was getting, calls from water and hydro, and like people were knocking on the door because it's like suddenly there's no account associated with the house I'm living in.
Wow.
And then, I mean, same thing like with my car insurance and all that kind of stuff. Like there was definitely a lot of not red flags, but like big things that I noticed that are huge flaws in our society, like especially as a woman, not having my name on the hydro bill and having proof that I live in my house and make sure my name's on the lease, and like all those things that you don't really think of when you're, happy and married, but then suddenly you're freaking trying to divorce and leave. And you're like, I have no credit rating. Like I have no credit history. I have nothing in my name. Like it's really, really hard to do any of that.
Absolutely. They don't teach you how to do that in school, right?
No,
and they should. That's what they should be teaching you. Forget the, the other stuff. So when you were married, you got breast implants. Tell me
I did.
about what led to your decision and how getting them made you feel.
So it's funny. It's a topic that I like. You think like a lot of people would be like, well, you're going to talk about your boobs. I've talked so much about my boobs in the last year. It's ridiculous.
Love it.
But when when I was married, there was always the push of like, I always had to lose weight. I always had to, like I had my son, and then it was like, I gained 8 pounds with him, and I still was like, oh my God, I need to lose 20. Like, just ridiculous. So I had so much effort in there, and then so much of my worth was, my long blonde hair and my eyelash extensions and my, can I stop biting my nails? Do I have nice shoes? Like it was all very like look at me. And so at some point, like as our marriage was kind of falling apart, it was like, okay, well, maybe it's me. Maybe like, maybe it's because I haven't lost those last 15 pounds. Maybe it's because I still bite my nails. Like all those stupid things that shouldn't impact your worth, they do start weighing on you. So when my son at that point, my son was maybe 3.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and I had only been not nursing for a year. So I mean, any breastfeeding mother can tell you that their boobs change after you nurse 2 babies. So I just was like, okay, well, it's my boobs. And I mean, it would be to the point that like I wore a shirt for like 2 years where it's like I would just never have my shirt off anywhere because it was just like, because I didn't feel like I liked myself. And it was like, with hindsight, it's just like, that's ridiculous. But then knowing that my thing was failing and I thought that was, a lot on me, I was like, I guess I'm going to fix my boobs. So then I was like, oh, I'm going to fix my boobs. And then, I mean, I found a fantastic surgeon and he, I had no real issue with like that whole process was very, very well done. But I didn't go into it necessarily just for myself.
Yes. Yeah.
So then after it's like, I mean, like spoiler alert, the marriage still crumbled. Like the boobs did not save.
The boobs didn't fix the marriage.
So at that point, it was like, okay, well then, this is there. I mean, there's a million other reasons that it ended in divorce, but like that for me was something that once I got diagnosed with breast cancer, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like I've only had these things in for a few years.
Yes.
Like I spent so much money changing my body and then I was told like, oh, by the way, we're going to cut those off in a few months. And I'm like, what?
Seriously?
Like I'm still paying them off. Like, are you kidding me? Just ridiculous.
Oh my goodness. So would you say, did your husband have like, did he pressure you into that? Or was it something that it was sort of an internalized pressure?
It was a little bit both. Like, there was always the, always make sure I have a push-up bra on so my boobs look nice and perky. Like there was always that kind of pressure, but then there also was well, yeah, we're gonna do that. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's go. Like there of course there
not
was
like no, you're perfect the way you are, right?
No,
sort of thing.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's crazy because the difference. I mean, like I'm repartnered and have a new baby and all of that stuff, but like the difference between that, like my previous situation and then my reconstruction now, because I mean, I have a million things that I have to pick with what happens with reconstruction. So, I mean, all these decisions I'm like bringing to my partner with all these things of like, do I take some off my belly to make fake boobs, or do I use my back muscle, or do I use do I get implants again? Like there's a million options, right? So, and when I bring them to him, he's like, well, what do you feel works best with you? Or like, if I'm like, okay, well, I'm leaning towards using more of my natural stomach. He's like, okay, but are you okay with the amount of downtime? Like, are you okay with the fact that you're not going to be able to, hold the baby for 6 months and you're not going to be able to lift anything heavy for 6 months? Like, are you okay with those big physical limitations? And it's not, oh, well, I'd prefer them higher and perkier. Like, you know what I mean? That doesn't factor at all.
Yeah. He cares more about your well-being than your
how is my partner going to feel, not how is my partner going to look.
I like that.
I mean, it's a really I'm still like, there's a lot of stuff that I still catch myself doing where I'm like, I have to pick nipples. Which ones do you like? And then I'm like, wait a minute, that's stupid. They're mine. But
Yeah.
it, you still catch yourself doing it because it's like,
Hmm.
it's trained behavior, and it's
100%.
freaking weird.
In our
It's so weird. When I
society,
catch
right?
myself, I'm like, and he looks at me like, what are you asking? Why? Like, why are you asking me this? Like, this is,
Because I
not
want
my
to
decision to decide
know.
what they look like. So it's definitely I mean, I'm adjusting.
It's
It's a
it is weird. Like sometimes, like I always say that, like I sometimes would like a little bit more feedback from my husband, but at the same time, it's nice to know that he doesn't really care.
right.
So
It's
just
like,
do
that's
you,
not
right? Like
it's
just do
yeah.
you, like
Well,
very
and it's
rarely.
I try to think of it like the other way as well too, because I mean, like, we're so critical of ourselves, but like when
Mhm.
you look at someone you love and like you objectively thought like, okay, well, if he had like a little divot in it or a dimple or something, would I ask him to go get fat grafting to fill that in?
Mhm.
No, I would just be like, oh, you've got a little dimple, and that would be it.
Yeah, I love
So,
that perspective.
but we don't do that to ourselves. To ourselves, we think, oh my god, he's going to see this little, my port
This
scar, and
flaw.
like, ah. But like,
Hmm.
I would never freaking care if he had a little scar on his chest. It would make no difference to me.
So
But for some
true.
reason, we switch it and we tell ourselves that, that matters, or that they care about that, and that, I don't know. It just, when you flip it, it seems insane that we're concerned about these things.
It's so true. And sometimes needing to flip it to get that perspective is really, really important. So when you were going through the process of getting breast implants, tell me about the shame. Like, was there shame from other people? Was it just, feeling the body shame of needing to do it? Like, talk to me about
I mean, it's a
things.
little bit of all of it. I mean, like, I'm really lucky in that, like, my family is rock solid. They're fantastic.
Hmm.
Like, I told my mom I was getting my boobs done, and she was like, okay, well, what do you like? When I told her how I was going to use like financing or whatever, she was like, okay, well, finance it through me. It'll be a lower percentage. Like, she was like, so like, we did that. I just did that through her. So like, she was like, sure, I'll help you so you don't have to pay as much interest. Like, they're
Hmm.
really
I
like,
love that.
I've got a really supportive family. My dad was just like, whatever you need to do for you. Like,
Yeah.
nobody really cared either way. I mean, I've got girlfriends who are like, "Oh, I would never. This is my body," and I'm like, "All the
Hmm.
power to you."
Yes, it's
But
your
no one
choice.
really. I don't think I ever really got any judgment on it. Everyone
That's
was
really
very
good.
much of like, "You do you," like, which I
I
mean is
love
how we should
that.
just treat all of it. Like,
I agree, right? And like I think there's this argument too, right? When people do shame people for modifying their body in
mhm.
some way. But my opinion is that we can both simultaneously be fighting against beauty ideals and still be allowed to do whatever the heck we want to our bodies to
Exactly.
feel good in them. Like we are a product of our environment. So obviously we have to survive, right? And if those things help
Exactly.
us, then that's all that matters,
Yeah,
like
I found
we're
I
not the
lucked out.
problem.
No, no, exactly. And I think there was a lot of um it's weird to me for like it was very easy for me to go in to see a surgeon and to talk to them and whatever. Like, that the
Mhm.
industry is so good at what they do.
Yes.
Um, but that said, I mean, even my doctor was like asking, is this something you want to do for you, or is this something you're here to do because of somebody else? And like,
Yeah.
he was very good with making sure that you were really confident in the process.
Mhm.
But I mean, by that point, I mean, you're so like, I was so into the whole like, no, I want these,
Of course,
right?
right?
Like,
You convince yourself that it's
yeah,
your choice.
that
And
it's your
it
idea.
is,
Yeah,
but yeah, we're a product of our environment, right? And we're not the problem. The culture is the problem. And
exactly.
our culture seems to be obsessed with the idea of big boobs, right?
Yeah, well, and it's
Um
funny, it goes back and forth so much. Like, there was so like, now I find it sometimes goes even the other way because now I can't find clothes that cover boobs. Like, it, you know what I mean?
True.
It's such a
Yeah, those 2000 like
I
era
don't know how
styles
everything
are
can
back
be
in.
the same. it can all, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like there's no winning. There's no winning.
I know, really. It's so true for us. So you were diagnosed with metaplastic carcinoma, which is a
Yes.
rare and aggressive form of cancer that accounts for fewer than 1% of all types of breast cancer, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Tell me about how you found out about your cancer and what that experience was
It's
like.
super weird. So my daughter was only 7 months. So
Hmm.
I had just finished pumping
Wow.
just switched her over to formula or whatever. And then I thought I was getting like a blocked duct.
Okay,
So
yep.
I found a little bump and I was like, oh crap. But also thinking like I've breastfed 3 kids. So I'm like, it's probably a blocked duct. And I really wasn't that worried about it. And
Yeah.
then it was still there after like a few days. And I was like, okay, you know what? If it's still there, I'm going to, like, I don't want mastitis because I mean, if you've ever
Yeah.
had that, you know, you don't want it. Um, and so I booked just a doctor's appointment or whatever. And she was like, oh, you know what? Like, we'll just be cautious and go get an ultrasound anyways, just
Hmm.
in case, because why not? And then that was going to be like a 2.5 week wait, 2.5, 3 weeks.
Yep.
And then by the time I got in, one had grown in my armpit and was like the size of a walnut.
Ooh,
So it went from
wow.
nothing to like feeling like there was a walnut in my armpit. And
Wow.
then when I went for my ultrasound, I don't think I was maybe home like half an hour before she called. Like they called so fast. I've never gotten ultrasound
Hmm.
results that fast in my life. Um, and they had said, like, this is not normal. She's like, there's no way that I can tell you, oh, that it's not breast cancer. Like,
Yeah.
the ultrasound was just
Hmm.
ridiculous. So then they were like, we got to get you in for biopsies. And so she put my papers to 4 different cancer centers, and it was going to be a 4 week wait.
What? Wow.
4 weeks to get a biopsy, and the one in my armpit had grown from nothing to a walnut in the 3 weeks that I was waiting for my ultrasound.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's insane. Like
Hmm.
I'll die. Like if it's that aggressive, I
Yeah.
cannot wait 4 weeks. That's impossible. So my doctor had made a bunch of other calls to try and like speed things up a little bit. And then I was messaging some family members and stuff to be like, what the hell do I do? And luckily, I mean, we've got family and healthcare and stuff too.
Good. Yep.
Um, and one of my aunts was able to say like, you know what, I can ask like my surgeon group and see if
Hmm.
anyone knows anybody or knows what the process is or how, because at that point I didn't even know like the process of getting into the cancer center. Like my doctor had
Yeah.
sent the paperwork, so I was just like waiting around for someone to call me, and that felt really not productive at all.
Oh, that's
um,
awful.
so she was able to give me like the name of a surgeon to call the office to say, listen, like I've got these ultrasounds, and like kind of put in my own referral, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, like to just kind of back it up and chase it a little bit. And then that bumped it up like 2.5 weeks. So I was in within a
Great.
week of it, and I started chemo maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that. Like it was really quick from
Wow.
biopsies, and like it went so fast. Like they are very on the ball.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. So what was the treatment plan like and how did
Yeah.
it physically affect your body?
Well, so I did, once I got diagnosed, they had the surgery plan for like, January or whatever. And like this would have been in August. So they were
Hmm.
like, you got to do 8 rounds of chemo, and then we'll do surgery, and then we'll do radiation. So, and I mean, at that point, when you're first diagnosed, you're going through every scan imaginable because they're trying to see how bad it is,
Hmm.
and then make plans off of that. So, I mean, I was in the hospital all the freaking time just for
Hmm.
like testing. And then once I started chemo, I was every like 3 or 4 appointments every 2 weeks. And then like it was ridiculous. It was a lot of back and forth. Um,
Yeah.
but the big thing was for me was like, I didn't I wasn't really nervous about losing my boobs. I was a
Hmm.
little bit. I mean, like I'm there's been a lot of growth in the last few years since I got my boobs, so I wasn't as upset about that as I thought I was going to be. And
Good.
then I was like, okay, then I'm gonna lose my hair too. Like, fuck. I was like, I am literally
Oh.
like all of the things that I have spent however long,
Mhm.
like attaching my beauty and my worth and all that shit too. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's all gonna fall off. Like, oh
Mhm.
fuck. So I like when it came to the hair, I was just like, well, you know what? I've had every hairstyle imaginable, every color imaginable. I haven't been bald yet, so
Might as well give it a go.
might as well give it a go. So we actually waited until like the week before, like maybe the week of chemo, like my
Yeah.
first one. Like I shaved my head off before I even started. So
Yes.
I had
No, a lot of people do that. I have heard that a lot
because
of,
you have the power. Like it's
yeah,
you doing it. It's not falling out
your
on its own.
choice.
Yes. So
Oh, I love
and
that.
we made it really fun. I let my kids cut my hair into whatever random style they wanted. We had like a bob. I had a mohawk at one point. I had like just ridiculous. Like I'm pretty sure I had a mullet. Like we just let them do whatever,
That's fun.
and then we finally shaved it all down. But there was no like it was like a family event. Like
Mhm.
it was fine. It was like it was actually a lot of fun. Um, but I mean, still, like when I'm finally like my partner did all the actual like shaving off
Yeah.
once my kids had had their run at it. And it was just really really weird because like I'm standing
Mhm.
there going like, well, I mean, if he's gonna leave me, now would be the time.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and you just default to that, right? Which is
Yeah.
insane. Um, but yeah, it was just ridiculous. So that, and then I was so sick through chemo. Like
Yeah.
the first 2 months, like those first 4 rounds, I was just really, really sick. Like I had to
Mhm.
give, like my mom would take my kids every other weekend on chemo weekends. And then like, Matt ended up extending his pat leave out to
Mhm.
December so he could just be home. So then he was the default parent
Perfect.
at home for
Yeah.
that chunk of time. And it was a lot. I mean, it was just a wildly huge adjustment. And then the last 4 rounds of chemo, I had bone pain to the point that I was just like loaded up with painkillers and edibles. And I was just like a pile of mush on the couch. I would just,
Oh
they'd be
my
like, do you
goodness.
need anything? And I'd be in my little heated blanket. And I'm like, no, no, I think I'm fine.
Just
Like, just,
leave
it was
me.
just ridiculous.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but I mean, there was also like we had a lot of fun. It sounds ridiculous to say, but like
Mm.
I had my whole family home for I mean, from the time their school ended in June until December. Like Matt went back to work in December, so or January. So we had like almost half a year where I kind of had aside from the kids going to school, like everyone was home. It was great.
Oh, and that's
Like
such an important way to deal with tough times too, right? Is the mindset work, which is not like none of that like toxic positivity where
no, no,
you're
no,
like
there's
everything is fine,
no,
but sort of the everything's not fine, but we're gonna make the best of it. And
right?
I
Well,
like
and I
kudos to
think
you.
like I lucked out in that like Matt's the most optimistic person on the planet. Like to the point that when I was first diagnosed and like with metaplastic, it's not great outlooks. Like there's
Yeah.
not the stats really are not in our favor.
Mm.
Or they weren't in our favor. They're fine now, but they weren't at the beginning. So
Yes.
even with that, I'm like, okay, like I got diagnosed and then I was like, shit, I have to rewrite a will and I have to like
Mm.
figure out what happens to my kids if I die. Like, which as a freaking 32-year-old mom of a 7-month old, like I was like, this is
Yeah, that's not what you want to be thinking about,
not what you
right?
want to be thinking
Yeah.
about at all. So, and then it's like, okay, is my life insurance set properly so
Mm.
that Matt, is the benefit, like all those things, like, is this all set up? And it feels
Mhm.
ridiculous to have to do that in my early 30s, but I mean, we had to do that. But even with those discussions, Matt would be like, it's probably going to all be fine. And I was like, yeah, I know it's probably going to all be fine, but we still have, like, if I die, do you then have to raise 3 children on your own? Like, or is your
Yeah.
mom going to move in? Like, how are we going to swing this? Um,
Yeah.
and it was just like, I mean, for me, it was a control thing. Like I wanted to be able to know, like all the I's are dotted, every T's crossed, like, and I don't have
Yes.
to worry about it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just a ridiculous, like, I don't know, facing your mortality, and then like your partner's just like, it'll all be good. We're good. We're good. It's fine.
Well, that's good to be optimistic though, right? Like,
Yeah, well, and it's, when we had the really rough days, it's like still okay. Like, and
Mhm.
the way I kind of explained it, I forget who I was explaining it to. I was explaining it to somebody, but like I've had life, I mean, I've had all these different genres of life, like the teen mom genre, and you know what I mean? Like
I love that. I'm
all
gonna
these
call them
different bits of
genres from
parenthood,
now on. Yeah.
right? But I found like even this, like even having breast cancer and being home with like all of my kids, like I've lived a lot of shittier genres than the one that I'm in now. Like
Mhm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
it's, if I had to do this, go through this, you know, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have survived it. Like
Hmm.
realistically, because your mind, like your brain is so freaking important to your outlook on all of it that I genuinely don't know if I would have. I don't know. I know what life looks like before this nonsense, and life with breast cancer is still better than the shit I was in before.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I can't be, it's not that I can't be upset. Like, don't get me wrong, there's days where I'm just like, this is fucking stupid.
Of
But the
course.
bulk of it is that it is better than it has been. So, I mean, how do you complain about that in the grand scheme of
Exactly.
things?
Oh, I love that. I think your outlook on life is something we all need. So during your treatment, when you got to the surgery part
Mhm.
of your plan, tell me a little bit about what they did. Like, did they remove your existing implants?
Yeah,
How did
so
all that work?
they started, like, I was given a lot of options at the beginning. Like, they were, my surgeon was always very much like, I'll give you all the options and then I'll tell you what I would recommend. So
I
she
like
would,
that.
give me enough knowledge that like I could make an informed decision. And she was like, the most conservative thing we can do is just do a lumpectomy, take out a few lymph nodes, and like, and hope. Um, but then like I have a family history of breast cancer. So I'm like, I don't really want to risk it coming back. And
Mm-hmm.
metaplastic likes to come back, so I don't want to risk that.
Yeah.
So she was like, personally, she goes, if it was me, she's like, I would take everything
Mm-hmm.
and know that that's not going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's what I did. It's like, I didn't even, like, my right side, there was no cancer, it wasn't affected at all. But the risk of it, you know what I mean? The risk of getting it again, I'm like, absolutely not. Just take it. Like, take it all.
Yeah.
If it gets me more time, if it gets me more, more life, more fun, more whatever, like
Do it.
just take it. So I had a full double mastectomy in January, and then they took out the implants as well. And
Mm-hmm.
then they took out 27 lymph nodes out of my left side,
Mm-hmm.
so, which was like 10 to 15 more than I thought they were taking.
Wow.
But she was
Wow.
like, and that's it. Going in, I had said, don't be conservative. Like, I would
Yep.
rather have a longer healing process and a, whatever than have to
And
do
have
this
the
again.
risk. Yeah.
Like, just, I don't want
Yeah.
to risk it. So she took out a little bit more, and it was fine. And then I had expanders put in so that eventually I could put implants back in. And
Mm-hmm.
then, so because of the expanders, they're basically like water balloons underneath your skin that they
Oh,
gradually
wow.
expand out to make sure you have skin.
Wow. Is that
So it's
painful?
not really. I mean, they told
Okay.
me it would be. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
people told me it would be, which is where I was really hesitant on like all my reconstruction options because none of them
Mm-hmm.
were good. But I also, like, when they did surgery, they also like kind of moved around some nerves, so I have no feeling all the way across my chest. So
Okay.
it might be painful. I don't know. My experience is that it
Yeah.
hasn't been, but a lot of people said it was. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Maybe it's just nerve damage. Who knows?
You never know, right?
Yeah. So, and I mean, at that point too, I think in February, I was like mostly, I don't know, the healing was kind of slow just because like you can't lift anything. Which, when
Yes.
you have a baby, like
Oh my
I went
gosh.
4.5, 5 weeks without holding my own baby. Like, it just, and like that was just another level. Like, it was
Yeah.
awful.
Oh.
Um, but then actually one of the things that I found was really helpful is I did end up getting, I was gifted like a sling from Heritage Baby Company
Oh,
in Guelph.
nice.
So I had a
Nice.
sling, and then that way I could still hold her without actually having to use any of my, like my own
Oh,
upper arm muscles or whatever.
that's
Um,
perfect.
so then I could still actually snuggle her. So that actually
Oh,
that was game changing because that really sucked.
oh, thank goodness for inventions like that,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I tell ya. So obviously, like the treatment is hard on your body. Um, I've heard people that have gained weight, lost weight. Um, I can only imagine the changes would be hard on your body image. Tell me how those parts
It's
impacted you.
yeah, I found like I mean by that point, by the point that they were like I went in for my mastectomy, I've always been like I like the gym. I've always been fairly active. Like I enjoy going. So I stayed doing that the whole time through treatment. Like
Mm,
I didn't
good for
I
you.
stopped for a little bit over like when I had surgery, I had to stop for a bit, but
Yeah.
even with that, I was going for walks. I was, you know what I mean, kind of doing everything, but I think by the end of it, I wasn't so much worried about how my body was looking because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I had like scars all over. I was bruised. I was like, at this
You
point,
were
it's
a
like,
warrior woman at that
nobody,
point.
yeah, it's just not, it doesn't matter. Um, but it was one of those things where I was so like, once I had done that, and then even more recently, like once I had finished radiation, like radiation, you're all burnt and crispy. It's just no fun.
Hmm.
But once I'd kind of got to that point, I was like, fuck, my body's amazing. Like,
Yes.
like I didn't, I didn't die. I didn't like, you know what I mean? I have no, I obviously I'll have side effects and stuff, but like in the grand scheme of things, like I came out relatively unscathed. Like I
I
came out
love
okay.
that.
So
Oh.
it's more of a like, I don't know. I just find I'm like more in awe now by it because like that's really freaking cool. And just because
Yeah.
in the last 2 years, I mean, I've done this, but then like I also had a baby. Like I had a baby
Yeah.
14 months
You
ago,
had a
right?
baby and beat cancer.
But
Like,
that's
holy
what I mean. Like,
crap.
so I'm looking at it like this way, and I'm just like I don't even know what my own body should feel like right now because I literally came right out of postpartum into breast cancer. So like
Yeah.
I don't think I've been in my own body for like 3 or 4 years. So like I don't even know what
Hmm.
that looks like,
Yes.
right?
But you
Like
get to figure it out, right?
yeah, so been it's been weird. It's just weird, but I don't so much think about it on like a
How
body
you
perspective
appear. Yeah.
anymore. Like
Yeah.
I do, like don't get me wrong, there's always I'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym and grow my hamstrings more or whatever." Right? Like
Yeah.
you have your goals, but like there's not my worth isn't attached to it. I'm not like,
Mm.
you know,
If anything, your body is so fucking worthy because it overcame so
yeah, well,
much,
and
right?
I'll have once I get my port out, like I'll have scars everywhere for the rest of my life, and like
Yeah.
I've got a permanent tan on my back shoulder from radiation. Like there's all kinds of weird stuff going on, but I don't have like I don't know. I don't have this whole like oh my goodness, I have to like my port scars showing. I have to make sure I wear like a full t-shirt or somebody will notice that I had a medical device insert. You know what I mean? Like things like that.
Yes. Yeah.
I just don't care. Um
I love it.
I
I
mean, what
love it.
I don't know.
So, what advice would you give to other women facing challenges around their body image who might not have had to deal with such a life altering
Yeah. I mean,
diagnosis?
just like I think we have to be so much kinder to ourselves. And I think a really really big thing was that like people who actually love you don't give a shit what your body looks like. They really
Mm-hmm.
don't. Like my kids don't care if my stomach is squishy. My partner doesn't care that I've lost my boobs and had to shave my head. Like you're if you're looking at your own people and you view like think of how they view you as you're viewing them,
Yes.
like we're really hard on ourselves for absolutely no reason. Like nobody the only people like judging us are like the large corporations that want us to buy their push-up bras. Like
Literally.
our actual people don't care. Like my friends who've been bringing us food and, watching my kids and like they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care that you're in bed with no makeup on and your hair's all over the place. Like they genuinely don't. So we spend so much time worrying and like wasting our life and our time on, whether these people care about what shade of lipstick I'm wearing. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, it just is ridiculous.
I think it's such an important lesson to learn and to share that with everyone too, right? Because I think sometimes until you've had an experience like that,
Mm-hmm.
to realize, what really is important and what people actually really care
Of
about
course. And
is
it's hard too, because I mean, when you're young, like, I mean, I've also been in that boat where it's like you do put your value on what you look like because that's
Mhm.
what somebody else is putting their value on. And
Yeah.
it takes it's really hard when, especially when you're young, to look at that situation and say that's not right. And to
Hmm.
see the flaw. If that's all you've known and that's all you know, that's the whole relationship with your partner has been surrounding that, it's really, really hard to look back and think that that's not normal or realize it's not normal because you've never known anything else.
So true.
So
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a lot of big soft spot because I like there's so many women that just you don't know what you don't know.
Yes, yeah. And that's why it's important that we have these conversations, that so that other women and they can learn these things, they can think a little bit differently, even if it's just little baby steps, and then hopefully it trickles down to the
Mm-hmm.
other generations eventually. And I think that is just so fantastic. So how long has it been since you received the news that you are cancer free?
So I got that. So they count it from like when you have your surgery, but I didn't really start counting it until I had my scans in like end of February. So end of February, I got negative, like all my big body scans or whatever were like, we can't find anything. So at that point, I was like, okay, that's really exciting. And
I love
then
that.
I still did. I mean, after that, you still do radiation for your safety net, and I'll be on meds for the rest of the year as a safety net. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna be. I probably won't. Not that I won't celebrate. I mean, I'm gonna go out this week and we're celebrating the fact that it's done. But like,
Yes.
I don't. I don't think like for me a big stage will be like once I hit that 2 year mark or that 3 year mark, because
Yes.
that's when I'm out of the woods statistically risk wise of it
Okay.
coming back. It's normally if it comes back, it's within those first 2 years. So that's kind of where it's like once I'm out of that, then I'll really feel confident in the whole.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm like, cool, I've beat it. Like I'm done. Like let's move
Yes.
on with life now, right?
Yeah.
Like let's get on
Exactly.
to the good stuff.
And how do you feel today? Like, how does your body feel today?
You know what? It's pretty good. Like I mean, I still went to the gym this morning. I like it's
Perfect.
great. Like I still have most of my capabilities. There's some stuff that I lost with surgery, like some muscle damage and stuff that like I'm noticing now that I'm trying to do things again. So like
Yes.
I can't hang from a monkey bar, and I'm like
I
you
don't
go
even
to
know
do
if
it, and
I
you're
could
like,
do that.
why can't I do this? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's things like that where now that I'm recovering, I'm kind of like, oh shit, I lost that too. Like, but it's not even
Yes.
so much, oh, I lost that. It's like I got to go back to the gym and build that up again. Like it's
Yes.
more of a
I can't do that again yet.
yeah. It's not so much like I'm not discouraged. Like it'll come
Yeah.
back, and I know it will because that's like I said. Like I just had a baby too. Like I've this whole like
Yeah.
thing has been very up and down the last few years, but um I mean, it's still doing what I ask it to do. So I mean, how can
Yeah.
I can't be
How
mad at
can you
that.
complain? Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's a really,
No, no
really
problem.
important one. Please tell us where we can follow you online.
So on Instagram, I'm Beth M Marchant, and then I mean I'm on there on Facebook as well. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Amazing. And lastly, before you go, if you could offer one final tip to our listeners, what would that be?
um, love your body enough to check your tits. Go check your
Yes.
boobs. Make sure they're good. Like no, be comfortable enough that you know what your body normally feels like. Because
Yes.
that's the only reason I caught it was because I knew what my body normally felt like and it didn't feel normal. So
Mm,
and some of that is just I mean, you have to like your body to really understand it and to know it and to you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
spend
Don't
more
ignore
time
your
just
body.
getting to know
Yeah.
yourself. Like it's such a, I don't know. It's the thing they tell us. They're like, oh, don't forget to check your boobs, but nobody tells you how. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's, it's just definitely learn what you normally feel like so that you can tell if something's off. And that's, I mean, that's with everything, right? Like if you know what feels normal and what doesn't,
absolutely,
you can take a lot more care of yourself.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. And we will share the links to all your social media pages because you're an excellent writer and storyteller. And I think you need to keep sharing.
Plan
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Real Happy Daughter, and remember that it takes immense courage to be yourself in a world that strives for conformity. So be brave and unleash your inner power.